Hi, I'm Nabila, and one of my goals this year is to learn how to mend my own clothes. I always procrastinate when it comes to working on my own clothes, and I know a lot of sewists feel the same way. But this year, I really want to take care of my wardrobe because honestly, I'm not pleased with the quality of clothing that we're seeing lately. I think we all know that the quality of clothing has gone down thanks to companies like Shein and Fashion Nova. These brands and companies like them are lowering consumer standards across the board for our clothing. So I want to fight the powers that be by mending what I already have so I don't have to go out and buy a cheaply made thing. So the first thing I want to learn how to mend are my socks because I'm so sick of my socks having holes in them. Like the sensory experience of having a hole where my big toe is and having my big toe poke out through this hole, like it drives me crazy. Currently, I am crazy. And the next item I want to tackle in this video is this tote bag. I've had it for a couple years. I think I got it after I graduated high school. So yeah, it's been a while. And it became my daily use bag when I was a fashion student. And now I take it to my vocal lessons and look at just how tattered these straps are. So I want to definitely fix these straps. And I think there's a hole in the bottom that I need to patch up. And I know I could just buy another tote bag, but did you know that tote bags need to be used 20,000 times to offset the impact of producing that tote bag? So that equates the daily use of this tote bag for 54 years. And that's just one bag. And the other reason why I want to fix this tote bag is because it's mine. I have so many memories with it and people compliment me on it all the time. It's so pretty. So I might as well just fix it. And the last thing I want to fix in this video is this Fitbit strap. It's driving me crazy. It's so loosey-goosey right now. I'm telling you, I'm crazy. So let's get started. In addition to my sock that has a hole in it, I also grabbed a darning egg and embroidery thread and a sewing needle. I'm really excited to play with color when it comes to my own mending. So the first thing I'm doing is just creating some color combinations with my embroidery thread. I inserted the darning egg into the sock, and this just gives me a taut surface to work on, sort of like using an embroidery hoop in traditional embroidery. Then I'm just securing this with a rubber band to hold it in a taut position. In place of a darning egg, I've also seen that you can use a glass jar or bottle, or even a tennis ball. To start, I've knotted my thread and went through the hole to ensure the knot is on the inside of the sock. I read a different guide that started with the sock inside out, so I think next time I'm gonna do that. Also, in different guides, it's common practice to weave your ends in, which I'm sure is fine, but I'm usually pretty rough with my socks since I tumble dry them, so I'm going to use knots in my work just to make sure this is really secure. Next, I'm just doing a running stitch for several rows through this weak spot in my sock. I'm not being very precise here since I just want to reinforce this section. I find it easiest to flip the direction of my darning egg so that my needle can always start on my right side since I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, you may prefer going on the opposite direction, but definitely play around with the way you hold your darning tool to make this work for you. When I've gotten to the end of the area that I want to reinforce, I'm just tying a knot on the inside of my sock. However, you could leave these knots to be the last step of this process. Next, I'm going to use some thread in a different color. If you're not as excited about the color work as I am, you could definitely pick a color that matches your sock and use the same color all the way through. Anyway, with this new color, I'm going to create some new running stitches perpendicular to my first stitches to the interlock. Again, I'm not doing this precisely, but I am trying to reinforce this well, so I'm just keeping my stitch lines pretty close together. Then I'll tie a knot on the inside of my sock to finish this off. And where my sock has a real hole in it, I'll start by stitching a circle along the hole first, and then I'll do similar running stitches. When I get to the hole itself, I'm just going to anchor my stitch near the hole and go right across so I have some horizontal threads going across the hole. Then when I come in to do the perpendicular stitches, first I'll do some running stitches to anchor my work like last time. Then when I get to the horizontal threads, I'm going to be more intentionally weaving my threads. So basically I'm going to alternate which rows I'm going to go over and under. When I get to the end, I'll tie those together in one knot on the inside. And here's the finished sock. I've only been doing this recently, but I've finished a couple socks now, and I've got to say this is a huge improvement from having a hole in the toe. If you're worried about the sensory experience, I could say for me, I can tell that the thread has a different texture than the rest of my sock, but it's way more comfortable than having a hole. This has also been just as relaxing and enjoyable as knitting is for me, especially when I'm darning a sock while watching TV. And the other cool thing about darning a sock versus knitting, at least for me, is it's way faster. Okay, next I'm gonna change the order up here because I literally cannot take my Fitbit sliding around my arm any longer. Elastic tends to get stretched out over time by nature, and yes, I could buy a new Fitbit band, but adjusting it instead will be so fast and easy. So to start off, I'm just locating where this elastic is looped and stitched right here, and I'm just gonna remove those stitches by seam ripping them. Now that the elastic is free, I'm pulling on it to tighten it up. And while it's in this tightened position, I tried it on to make sure it was comfortable. Then I'm just hand stitching this elastic back in place. I could bring this over to the sewing machine and sew it up really easily, but it's kind of in a tight spot, so the time it would take to adjust this and get it in the right spot just isn't worth it to me, so I don't mind practicing my hand sewing here. And now that the hand stitching is done, I'll just snip off the excess elastic and ta-da! All done! And last but not least for this video, I'm going to give my beautiful tote bag some new life. So first thing I want to tackle is this hole in the lining. You'll notice in this clip there's a bunch of white dust, and that's from the interfacing of the embroidery flaking off. So if I fix the lining, then those flakes should stay at bay. To sew up this hole in this lining, I'm just going to do a whip stitch, and I'm doing this with some red thread at first, just so you can see what I'm doing. Basically, I'm pinching my hole closed, and then I'll sew through all 4 layers of that fabric, starting from the bottom and going out towards the top. And every time my needle comes out through the top, I'll start it right back at the bottom layer of my fabric. But when it actually comes time to sew this hole up for real, I'm just switching to some thread that matches the bag lining and closing up that hole. Yay, now that that's all done, it's time to replace the straps finally. So again, look how worn out these are. They're literally in tatters. So first thing I'm going to do is carefully seam rip these straps off so I can measure them. And then I'm going to use these measurements to inform how long I should cut my new fabric, which is a cotton duck canvas fabric, which I've pre-washed and ironed before I started this project. I ended up cutting these straps to be slightly wider than the original because the way I was going to have to cut it if I was going off the original measurements, I would have had an inch of fabric go to waste, so I thought I might as well use it in the width of the strap. And wider straps are more comfortable to wear anyway. And I also cut some interfacing to adhere to my straps just to give it some extra durability before sewing them up. So to sew these, first I pressed these in half, and then on that open edge, I folded a quarter on either of the open edges to the inside and top stitched it in place. I also top stitched the folded edge just to give it a clean finish. Since the original straps had ribbon, I was looking through my materials and I found this really cool metallic blue ribbon that I thought I could add to my straps just to keep the integrity of the original design. The blue tones might not match the design of the bag perfectly, but it's better than having plain straps in my opinion. Now that the ribbon is top stitched into place, I just sandwiched it between the lining and the outer bag fabric and sewed that in place. I ended up doing 2 stitch lines for these sections, and then later on I even added a very small and close together zigzag stitch, sort of like a bar tack, because I'm usually carrying around way too much in here, so I really wanted to give these straps some extra stability. And there you have it, my tote bag is all fixed for the brand new straps. What do you think? And that's all for today's video. Please let me know if you'd like to see any more mending content. Thanks for watching, bye!